So in this video, we're going to take a look at some of the useful properties and methods of arrays. Let me start by creating an array of integers and call it numbers. So int array numbers equals new int array. And I'm going to use the object initialization syntax to immediately initialize this array. So some random numbers here, like 3. Now note this green underline here. ReSharper is suggesting to use var to make the code cleaner. So I'll put the cursor here, Alt and Enter, and Enter. Also here, note that int is grayed out, which means it's not necessary. So we can keep the code even shorter. So again, Alt and Enter, and Enter. Now, let's take a look at the length property. Length returns the size of the array. So in this case, we have 6 elements in the array, so the size of the array is 6. So console.writeLine . Let's run the application. So we got 6 on the console. Now let's take a look at the index of method. We use this method to find the position of an element in the array. Let's say we are looking for 9. So we can use this method like this. Array.index of, I open the bracket. Look at the tooltip. There are different ways to call this method, and that's what we call method overloading. So in this example, this method has 5 overloads, or 5 versions. I'm going to use the first one, which is the easiest. So look at the first parameter. That's the array that we're going to do a search in. The second parameter is the actual object we're looking for. So I press escape, pass my numbers array here, and as the second argument, I'm going to pass 9. This method returns an integer. So I'm going to store the result in a variable called index. Let's display index on the console. So the index of 9 is 2, which means it's the third element in the array, because in C#, the index of the first element in an array is 0. Now let's take a look at the clear method. So this method has 3 parameters. The first element is the array. So I passed numbers here. The second parameter, called index, is the starting index of the range of elements to clear. Let's say we would like to clear the first 2 items. So I'm going to pass 0 here as the starting index. And the third parameter is the length, which is the number of elements we would like to clear. So I'm going to pass 2 here. Now I'm going to iterate over this array using a for each block and display all the elements. So let's take a look at the effect of clear method. Note that the first 2 items are set to 0, and that's the meaning of clear. So in this example, because our array is of type integer, clearing these numbers means setting them to 0. If we have an array of booleans, clearing that array means setting some of its items to false. And if we have an array of strings or other kind of objects, clearing the items in that array means setting them to null. Okay, now let's take a look at the copy method. So this method takes 3 parameters. The first parameter is the source array, the second parameter is the destination, and the third parameter is the number of elements we would like to copy. So before using this method, I need to declare another array. So this is a smaller array. It has only 3 elements. So I'm going to copy the first 3 numbers from our numbers array into our another array. So And now let's display the result on the console. And run the application. So notice that after we call the copy method, the first three elements in the numbers array, which were here, are copied to the second array. Now let's take a look at the sort method. This method again has 5 different versions. I'm going to use the first one, which is the easiest. So I simply pass our another array. Let's display the result on the console. And run the application. Actually, this was not a good example because our second array was already sorted. So I'm going to apply the sort method on our original array. So, and we need to change that in the for each block. Let's run the application again. That's better. So we got 0, 0, 2, 6, 9, and 14. And one more method we need to explore in this lecture is the reverse method. Okay, let's run the application. So here's the effect of the reverse method. Okay, before we finish this lecture, there are a couple of things I need to point out here. The first one is, look at the first example. We access the length property on the numbers object. Whereas in other examples, all the methods we called, like index of, was called on the array class itself, not the numbers object. So what is the difference? The difference is if a method is accessible on the class itself, like array, that means it's a static method. We're going to take a look at the static members later in this course. For now, just remember, when a class member, like a method or field or property, is declared as a static, that means it's accessible from the class itself. But otherwise, that member is accessible via the object. So let me show you an example here. If I type array dot, these are all the static methods defined in the array class. But if I type numbers dot, these are the members that are not static. They're instance members, which means they're accessible via an object. So if I type index of here, you see, there is no method called index of. Or if I type clear, there's no such a method called clear. That's why it's only accessible from the array class. Now you might be wondering, how did I know which member is static and which member is not? Well, part of that is the experience. But if you try to access a member and you cannot find it, your best help is Google. Simply go to Google, and let's say we are looking for the sort method of the array class. We simply type C# array sort. And the first method, pretty much in every single case, is the documentation on the MSDN, Microsoft Developer Network. So if we go here, this is the standard documentation of the sort method of the array class in .NET Framework. So you can see all different ways of calling this method. That's what we call overloading. Remember? So a method can have different overloads, which means it has different versions. So note that all these methods have a red S in front of them. That means it's a static method. Now let me show you the array class itself. So we scroll down, we go to array class. I note that these properties here, they don't have that red S, which means they're not static. They're instance members. They're instance properties. And look, most of these methods, except clone and copy to here, are static. So whenever you get stuck, just jump on Google, type C# and then type the name of the class and the name of the method. I hope you enjoyed this lecture and thank you for watching.